Hi, my name is Asif Khan, and I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. In today's session, we will be talking about the DevOps self-hosted agent capability in the Microsoft realm. Within the Microsoft ecosystem, we have two major platforms which we use for DevOps. One is Azure DevOps, ADO, and the other one is GitHub. With Azure DevOps or GitHub, both under the hood use these agent capabilities to run your pipelines or actions. Now, looking at the DevOps, it's more like an ideology instead of a specific tool. So DevOps, in a very simplistic definition, it's said that it's a mingling of people with processes using tools or technologies. Now, with respect to the tools and technology side, this is where Azure DevOps or GitHub Actions, GitHub comes into the picture. Now, with both of these platforms, there are a lot of different capabilities. And what we will be looking today is more focused on the agent capability, which basically run under the hood and execute your pipelines or execute your actions to basically build or deploy your artifacts into different destination location, which might be a production environment or a non-production environment. So with respect to these agents, again, there are free agents which are cloud-hosted agents. So when you create an Azure DevOps project or GitHub repository, you get a cloud-hosted agent, and you use those agents for your particular build or release processes. Now, those cloud-hosted agents are pretty much good enough for any pre-prod or pre or dev environment. But if you're looking at it seriously for production workloads, you should look at what are the limitations and then accordingly make a decision whether you want to go with the cloud-hosted agents or you want to run your own agents. So I'll just quickly show you some specific use cases how these cloud-hosted agent might fall short, and you should look at the self-hosted agent capabilities. So looking at this particular diagram, you can see we have Azure DevOps and GitHub, which is the Microsoft stack of Azure DevOps platforms and tools. Now, in this, Azure DevOps and GitHub both have a different set of capabilities like project management, version control, pipelines, and releases. In GitHub, you have repos and you have actions. Boards are coming up, which is more for project management. On top of it, you have these cloud-hosted agents in Azure DevOps, or you have runners in GitHub. All these are free, and then on top of it, they are available in different flavors, whether you want to run it Windows or a Linux agent, or you want to run a Mac agent. So all these are available in the cloud itself. You basically provision your pipeline or the release process, or you define your action as a YAML file. And then these agents or runners take those YAML or configuration and execute accordingly and then deploy it into different cloud environments, which can be Azure, AWS, or other clouds like GCP or Alibaba. Now, that all works pretty seamless because all these cloud, you can use RBACs and identity access management capabilities to get an identity, and then you provide that identity to the agent, which is now totally enabled to go and deploy things. But what happens if we go and try to execute the same process in a private environment, something like a virtual machine or something like an infrastructure running in a colo, or let's say in your own data center in the same building as your organization. Now, in that situation, most of the time you will see you will have a firewall in front of it, which would be basically required in order to secure your private environment from any brute force attack or ransomware attack. Now, these firewalls are very concrete, and they are designed in a way that not anything which is not required to enter should not enter. So all the traffic is basically defaulted to reject, and then only limited traffic which are known are allowed to enter. Now, in that use case, if you want to have these runners or agent to communicate with your private infrastructure, you will have to poke some holes in these firewalls, which obviously is a big tussle with your security team. And then you will have to go through a lot of to and fro's to get that enabled. And even once you get that enabled, it basically now is also opening an avenue for malicious actors to get into your environment using the same hole which is created. So that's one part of the challenge. The other part is because these agents are running in shared environment, they have a defined queue which is running on a global scale. So sometimes the build or release process take a while. The other challenges are these agents are private free, so they have a limited amount of hours and time which you can utilize for a month. And then once that time is expired, you have to either go and buy further time for running these agents, or you'll have to wait for the next cycle to come in where you get the free hours again. Now, these are some of the challenges, and how these self-hosted agent can solve those challenges are what I have shown below. So what you have over here is again the same ADO and the Git environment, but on top of it you don't see any of the agents in either of those environments. So no runners, no agents. What we have done is we have ported those agents and runners in your own environment. So whether it's a Azure environment, AWS environment, or a private environment, either of those places, we basically take these agents, and these are like services. They are can be deployed on a Linux or a Windows or a Mac environment. And once you have deployed that, now the same firewall would be sitting in front of your private and public environment, but you don't need to poke any hole because these agents work on an outbound 443 HTTPS module and HTTPS protocol. And using that HTTPS protocol, they basically communicate to the cloud hosted platforms like ADO and GitHub instead of the cloud environments communicating to them. So that makes it pretty easy because outbound conversation are normally enabled on those firewalls. If they are not, then in that case, you can easily communicate with your security team because outbound communication channels are pretty much not that unsecure. And then on top of it, it is just using the HTTPS 443 enablement as a requirement on these firewalls. So that's pretty acceptable in most of the organizational use cases. And that would give you even additional hours because now it's running in your own on-prem or let's say in the cloud deployment environment. So you have these agents pretty much you can run 24/7 without any time limitation. And on top of it, if you want to even scale it, you can run it in a containerized environment. So running in a containerized environment will give you that scale, which is really powerful. So now we have seen all the theoretical aspects. Let's let the rubber hit the road, and we'll see things in action. So I'll quickly take you to the GitHub experience. In today's session, we will be mostly looking at the GitHub runners, and there's no different to basically a ADO agent. They are almost the same way in respect to the deployment as well as in respect to the execution. So let me quickly switch. So on the screen, you can see I have a simple GitHub repository. So this is my GitHub private account. I have created Action Runner repository. Inside the repository, I have everything vanilla apart from this GitHub Action, which is .NET 5 ASP.NET 5 application, MVC application. It is again a vanilla application. There's nothing fancy in this. I've just used the default template in Visual Studio to create this and check this in. So if I quickly show you the Visual Studio for the project. So as you can see on the screen, this is my Visual Studio project. And this is my GitHub Action app, which is what I have created. And the specific things which are there are these HTML or CSHTML files, which basically have simple code. And the most interesting one which we will be playing around today will be this index.cshtml. So apart from that, there is nothing specific in the application. Um, and then apart from, yeah, on the GitHub side, that's my repository. If I go into the actions, at this stage, I don't have any actions set up. So it's pretty clean. These are default templates which you can use to create your own actions. And then we have the last one, which is our self-hosted runner. So as you can see, we do not have any self-hosted runner. If you go inside the settings, so this is my repo. If I go inside the settings, which is my last option, inside the settings, if you go inside the actions, inside the runners, you can see if you have any runners. If you don't have, you can go and create one. Now, in order to create a runner, we can create it from the portal, but we have to deploy it on a virtual machine. So I'll quickly show you a virtual machine which I have created. So this is the virtual machine. I have installed IS on this, and then on top of it, I have a specific .NET 5 application template which I have created. It's a site which I have created, which is all blank. This site is mapped to this destination folder, and I have also this GitHub Action Runner, which is a folder I've created where I'll be setting my agent. I also have administrative PowerShell experience. So I have I've opened a PowerShell in administrative mode so that you can run all your commands without any challenges. So going back into the browser, if I quickly click on that, so what that will lead to is it will give me experience of whether I want to run the agent on a Linux, Windows, or Mac. You can select according to your own specific requirement. And then these are straightforward commands which I have to run in order to get the agent provisioned. I've already created an action runner directory, which I already showed you. What we need to do now is next is to download the specific agent. So I'll quickly go into the VM and I'll download the agent. So I'll copy the command and I'll quickly run the command over here. So yeah, depending on your internet speed, it should be done in, let's say, 30 or 40 seconds or within a minute's time. In the meanwhile, let's go into the GitHub and see what else are we having over here. So what happens is once we have executed all these commands, and this is the config command which installed the agent. Once the agent is installed, we will be able to create an action, and that action is basically YAML configuration. So this action over here, as you can see, is a simple .NET. In my case, I'm using ASP.NET 5 Razor application, which is again vanilla. So it basically needs a couple of activities. If you're from .NET background, if you're doing a node, you will have a similar sort of step for your node application as well, node build and stuff. It does for .NET, it does a restore, build, and test. In our use case, we will also have a deployment step where what I showed you on the VM side, where we have an IS server, we will also do the build and then copy the build artifact into the specific folder which is mapped to my IS server. So once all that is done, we will have action runner, and that action runner we are expected to run you on the same agent we are installing. So in the action runner, if I go back to the template, so default template, you can see it uses Ubuntu latest, which is a cloud-hosted runner. But what we will do is we will use our own runner instead of using the Ubuntu hosted agent runner. So now coming back to my VM, I can see the specific agent has been installed, has been downloaded. Now next step is I need to install the agent. So before I install that, I need to unzip this particular zip file. So that's how I'm unzipping it. And the last step is I'll basically install the agent. So that's where this configuration file comes into the picture. So this is a config.cmd, which I'll quickly zoom. Okay, that's fine. So this config.cmd command, and then it also has a token. So this token will help in basically connecting the GitHub action runner, which we have provisioned from the portal, to this particular action runner, which we are provisioning over here. So if I run the command, yep, so now it's running. It's basically installing the agent, and I'll take all the defaults. You can basically go and look for each of these configuration options. So there is a agent group under which you can run multiple agents. I'm just using the default agent group. I'm using default agent name. Just keep an eye on this name, DevOps Demo AGEN, because we will be verifying this agent once the agent is installed. So I'm just using all the defaults, and now it's installing the agent. And now it's asking me which folder I want to use. I'll just use the local folder where I'm running this particular command. And it says, do you want to run it as a service? Yes, I do want to run it as a service. It says about the account. By default, it's selecting network security. We will change it later, but for now, I'll just use the network security. Now, if I go into my services.msc, and if I go into my GitHub, yeah, I can see there is a GitHub action. And the most important one is you can see the DevOps demo-agen. So that's the agent which we provisioned, and that's what we have. So by default, it is using the service account. I'm just using the local system account. The reason for changing this is because I need to copy the files from my build directory or the action runner directory to a specific destination directory map to my IaaS server. So that's why I'm just using a local account. Apart from that, you can run the network account. You can run it on the network account as well. Now going back to the portal, we have done all the magic which was required on the virtual machine side. So we have an agent running, we have everything all sorted. Now we'll go to the portal, and now what I'll do is I'll just click on the runner or refresh the page. Once I do that, I can see I have a demo, DevOps demo AGEN, as you can see over here, and this is my agent which is currently idle. So all pretty aligned and straightforward. As we discussed earlier, the next step is to create a particular action. So in order to create an action, I'll just use this .NET default template. As I showed you earlier, by default, it uses the cloud-hosted runners. We will be using self-hosted instead of Ubuntu latest so that we can have our own hosted agent. If you have multiple agents and if you want to use specific agent, you can add the name of that particular agent along with your self-hosted identifier. So what I'll do is I'll quickly copy a YAML configuration I did earlier so that we have expedite this entire process. So as you can see over here, I'm using self-hosted agent. This will point the specific action to my runner specific, which I have over here. And then on top of it, what I'm doing is I'm doing some regular .NET stuff. There's nothing fancy in this. So if I zoom this, so yep. So what I'm having over here is yep. So let me mark some of those items which we are specifically doing. So if I click, yeah. So what I'm doing is firstly I'm doing a restore to restore all my NuGet dependencies. I'm doing a build. I'm doing a publish. And the publish is basically going into a specific folder by the name my app. And this is a folder I'll show you once we have the build initiated. The last part of this action item is running this PowerShell. So we are running a PowerShell. Now that PowerShell is basically taking our artifacts which we have created and it is putting into the destination folder. So as you can see, we have this my app where our artifacts gets created, and this is the destination folder where the copy command will take the artifacts, and our IS application after that should be able uh, to present the application. So if I go into the VM, at this stage, my destination folder is all empty. If I click on the browse button, it is giving an error, all fine. If I go into the work folder, it's empty. Once we initiate the particular YAML configuration and a build executes, we'll see a lot of things happening over here as well. So I'll just quickly go back to the browser. And now we are in the browser. What I'll do is I'll just do a check-in over here to make it simple. Technically, you should do all this from your particular selected ID. Just for simplicity, I'm doing over here. So once I do the commit, so it has committed the code. I have it inside my GitHub workflows. And if I go into my actions, I can see the agent is still idle, but eventually it will change. And if I go into my actions now, so I can see there is a new um, build which is executed. The runner is action is basically getting executed, and it is doing all the steps which we have listed in our pipeline. So as you can see over here, there are a couple of steps, and if I quickly zoom this, so maybe I'll point this. So we are done with the restore process. The next is we are going to do a build, and hopefully the build is also done. Now we are having an upload artifact, which is the build is successful. So the build is published and then upload is happening. And the last step is where we'll have the PowerShell script. Now coming back, yeah, so the script is all run. It's doing a cleanup. So we have a successful build which has been completed. Going back to the action runner. Um, yeah, so I can see that create is all green, and on top of it, I can see I have an artifact over here. So this artifact has been also deployed in the destination folder, which I showed you earlier, but you can also download it, and if you want to verify it, you can verify it from the portal itself. Now coming back to the virtual machine, this work folder, which I showed you earlier, as you can see, is now all filled. And if I go into the action runner and action runner, I can see inside the action runner, there is a folder named My App, which I showed you earlier. And if I quickly zoom this, uh, okay, maybe That's fine. So my app, inside that I have all the binaries, and if I go into the destination now, so if I click on that, my binaries have been copied. And if I go and open this application, hopefully once the application is open, it should basically show me, yeah, so now it shows me application running from it. This is the vanilla application which we have in .NET Visual Studio solution, which I showed you earlier. Now, in a real world scenario, uh, this would not be the end of your world. You would be doing a lot of other things. So what happens in a regular churn process? So inside my Visual Studio, if I go back, firstly I should go to Git changes because I have checked in a file, my YAML configuration file. So I'll download that. So I'll do a pull. So firstly, I'm doing a pull so that my code base is synchronized with whatever is there in the GitHub version control. So it looks all synchronized. And if I see over here at this stage, it was just showing this learn about build web application with ASP.NET Core. I'll quickly zoom that. So this is what we were seeing on the portal when we were when we initiated or when we opened the portal. This was the message which came up in the IS on from the IS server. Now what I'll do is I'll just for seeing a real world experience, I want to add an image as well. So I have added an image over here, which I'll uncomment. And just to see if everything is running locally, I'll just build this. So once I build this, it should run, and obviously it should also show me that image with the default message, which we already saw on the IS deployment. Now, in the meanwhile, while that is happening, if we come back to the browser, once we do the check-in, like once we have run the code locally and it is all good, and we do the check-in, we will see the changes coming over here in our GitHub Action project inside the specific pages. Let me go to pages, and if I go inside the pages, okay, the application is running. This is my localhost running the application. So hopefully the image should come in a while. Um, in the meanwhile, by the time that's loading, this is the index.cshtml we have changed. At this stage, you can see it's commented on the server on the repository side, but locally it's working. Locally, we have just deployed the code, so hopefully it should be showing the image. Because I'm basically recording at the same point of time as I am running this Visual Studio, so my CPU is just burning out at this stage. But yeah, it's just not that slow. So this is the image which has come up apart from the default learn about build web app with ASP.NET Core. So that's all looks good. Coming back to my Visual Studio. I will just, yeah, so application is all stop. I'm all fine with the code changes. I'll go to the Git changes. I can see I have my index.cshtml over here. I'll say updated image, and that looks pretty okay. So if I go and say, yeah, I want to commit all, and I also want to push. So that's what I am doing. So I'm just committing all and pushing. It's making the changes, initializing the push, and then it will just publish the changes into my GitHub version control. So I think I'll quickly switch to the browser. Yeah, it has published everything. Everything looks green. Coming back to the browser now, if I refresh this page, I can see the image has been enabled. Quickly going to my pipeline, GitHub Action runner. So I can see in GitHub Actions, I have new update image. That's the message which I have posted. And yeah, so the build has been executed. So it will build. Yeah, it will do all the regular stuff, build, restore, build, and then publish artifact, upload. And the last is where the PowerShell will copy the latest code base to the destination. So that's been done as, so it's publishing now. It's uploading to the artifacts. It all looks pretty good. And once the upload process is completed, the next step would be just publish. Okay, so PowerShell. Yeah, so I've seen this error a couple of times. The reason being is sometime because the IS application is already locked the specific code base. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go into my virtual machine and I'll stop the IS server. So I'll just stop for now. In a real world scenario, this would not be the use case because you would be running it in a load balanced scenario and you'll not be deploying in your primary server. But I've done it very blank. So I have this folder directly and it is on a shared folder. Obviously, these things are much more taken care when we do productionization. So I'll just do a rerun and hopefully if the uh, yeah, if the specific logged environment is like if IS has released my specific folder, the destination folder, we should see the deployment successful this time. So yeah, so it's doing the similar build and so let me just switch to the browser. So yeah, it's again, we have re-initiated the build. It's doing the build and next is publish. This time it will be quick because everything has already been cached into the folders on the action runner side. So yeah, it's everything is taken from the local. And the last step is where we have the truth. So PowerShell uploading the code into the new. Okay, so it's still failing. So what I'll do is I'll quickly check that and yeah, just I'll check it now. All right, so I found the problem. So the problem was basically the agent runner, which I showed you earlier. The service account or the account which it is using to basically run, at this stage, it doesn't have a option or doesn't have a capability to override the folders. And so what I've done is I've just cleaned the destination folder for now. And if I go back to the build, I've initiated a build. So hopefully once the uh, PowerShell is executed, it should now just do a fresh copy instead of trying to override. So all these things are, I think so, the demo gods were not happy today. So now it's been able to copy to the destination folder in the PowerShell. And if I open, I can see all the code base is now updated to 136, which is 1 minute prior. And if I just go into my IS application, and if I run the browser, open the browser, I can see that the new image has been installed. Like if I show the VM. So yeah, if I go into the browser, I can see now the application is running. And yeah, the GitHub Actions have been able to take the latest code base and deploy it. So if I just show you the code base, it's running, it's at 136, which is 1 minute prior to now. And yeah, so it's pretty straightforward, and this would be your regular churning process. Whether if you are running a high intensity application with good churn, maybe a couple of builds and releases every day, I think GitHub Actions can be the way to go forward with a self-hosted agent. I highly recommend everyone to have a test and try to run it out. You don't need to run a server similar to what I showed. You can do it on your local laptop or any machine which you have. And definitely it's a very straightforward and pretty good experience. So thanks a lot for watching the session. I'll share all the YAML configuration, everything in the links below. And do post your comments and queries if you have any. More than happy to have some suggestions as well. Thanks a lot for watching.